Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Music. This week, we are so excited. We have a fantastic guest for you all to share and listen to and to hear this person's heart and their journey in the music industry, both gospel and secular. And, like I said, this person, I don't know who this person hasn't worked with. Bio. I'm not even going to read the bio. The bio is so extensive, it would take the entire show. Jeff, you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this person has played with so many people. It is untrue. You'd have to put some time aside to go through the list. I'm sure we'll give you some names, and you can just go out and listen to that stuff when you get a chance. But more importantly, we've got our guest today that we're going to speak to, and he will just enlighten us about the reality of stuff behind the music. We want to find out about him, the person, which would be great.
That's right. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, those of you, thank you for joining us on the GX platform, and thank you for joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Our guest this week is no other than, he's been titled as the godfather of gospel bass players, no other than Andrew Gouch.
It is. You said it right.
Did I get that right, my man?
That's exactly how it's pronounced.
Okay, cool. Listen,
man.
Welcome, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
And I thank you for thinking about me. And cool.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Listen, we want to know a little bit about your journey. You know, like I said, your credits is very extensive. It would take the entire show to read out. But, I mean, there are several well-known, everybody on it is well-known basically, but the person that jumped out to me was, Chaka Khan, you as a MD. But before we go there, just tell us a little bit about where it all began with you, as a musician, growing up in church.
Well, it began with when we were kids. My mother, I have actually two brothers now, but back then it was just one brother. I have a brother that's 20 years younger than me, so he wasn't around yet. My mother I'm the oldest of the first three kids she had.
Okay, right.
She told us all when I was about 8 years old that we had to learn an instrument. And my father had Hugh Masekela.
Oh, wow.
All right. Yeah.
And so I knew he played the trumpet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, the trumpet only has 3 keys on it, so it's the easiest. So I picked the trumpet, not understanding that the trumpet is the hardest instrument to play because you have to do everything with your lip.
Yeah.
And so I chose the trumpet, and that's how I started. My mother was a gospel singer. My grandfather was a prominent pastor in Los Angeles, California, where I grew up. Mm. And so my mother was the vocalist for his church all the time, and she played piano and sung. And she eventually toured around the world for some years while we were young, singing background for some pop artists. It was funny because we thought she was famous because she was all around the world. I played the trumpet. I played for from the time I was 8 until I was about 16, I think. So 8 years.
Okay.
And I literally was horrible on the trumpet all of those years that I played it. I never got higher than second trumpet in the jazz band. And in 73, I'm gonna tell my age like a lot when I say a lot.
Hey, no, God, that's fine. But listen, you don't look your age anyway.
Trust me. I'm very grateful and appreciative for still even being around now. There's a whining song. I don't know if you remember. It said millions didn't make it, but
I'm glad I did. Yeah.
So that's kind of my testimony right about
it.
Okay.
In 73, I saw Larry Graham on a show called Soul Train. I know you guys are familiar with Soul Train.
Yeah.
Saw him on Soul Train, and I just became enamored with the bass, and I begged my mom to get me a bass. Wow. So she got me a bass for Christmas, and it was from a department store. I remember the bass. It was a bass brand called the Tysco bass, and with a Sears Silvertone amp. The bass and the amp together were like $129.
Okay.
But to me, that was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
It was amazing because I played the trumpet all those years, and I was never good on the trumpet, but when I started playing bass, within a year I was doing gigs.
Wow.
How old were you then, Andrew? What age were you at then when you started playing bass?
14.
Okay.
Wow.
I was 14. And
so by 15 you were doing gigs?
Yeah. And I was playing in churches around LA. And I'll never forget, I used to put that little raggedy amp in my car and go around and play. And when I got the bass, we were attending Reverend James Cleveland's church, and I sung in the choir. And when I got the bass, he had a bass player that toured with him, but his bass player lived in New York. So there was no bass player at the church, but there was a bass amp at the church. And I loved that bass amp because it was way better than the one that I had. Literally, since there was no bass player at the church, I asked him if I could bring my bass and try to learn the songs. And he allowed me to sit over on the side and try to figure out the songs. And that was literally my school. And it's funny because when people ask me like who my influences were not bass players, because James always had the greatest singers, and so singers were my influences. And I didn't realize it then, but that's the way. I think that's the reason that my playing is the way it is. Like, it's not like traditional bass. I don't do traditional bass licks, and I'm thinking melodies all the time when I play. And so
you literally play like a lead singer.
Well, yeah.
Well, I listened to some of your I listened to your album.
Well,
You Don't Need No Bass.
Yeah, that's me doing solos, and I had to grow into that. I started working on that album in 2002.
Okay.
And I didn't release it until 2015.
Wow. Okay.
And initially, I don't know if you've ever heard of Donald Hayes, incredible gospel saxophone player. He's not he's a gospel guy, but he does a lot of stuff now. We always played together, and when we initially started recording my songs, I had him playing all the melodies on all the songs. And then I was like, well, it sounds like his record, not mine. So I literally took him off of all the songs. There's just a couple where he's playing along with me, and I had to practice. I wasn't. And it's funny when you become prolific at something, then you're not used to not being good at something. So I was not. I played. If you listen to the records I did, I was playing a lot of stuff, but it was still playing the groove, and that's the thing. But I was never playing solos, and I spent most of my life being what they call a sideman. And so I took me a while, and then I had to get over this fear. Like, for some reason, I thought that people weren't going to like my music, and I got stuff going off here. Sorry. So I didn't release it for years. And then my sister, who you guys, I don't know if you know her name, Jackie Gouch Ferris, but you know her. Have you ever heard that song, My Help?
Yes.
That's my sister that wrote that.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And my whole family is really, really musical.
Wow. Fantastic.
But she said to me, dude, after all the people you've played with and as much as you've done, you know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And that's why I came to the realization that no matter what you do, somebody is not going to like it.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right.
you can't focus on that. There's always going to be somebody that will be critical.
Yeah,
I like what you do. So I released the album, and it was a blessing for me, because to see people receive my music, that a lot of those songs just were like bass lines in my head, and then I made songs out of them, like if players. Clive, you play bass, right?
Yeah.
You know how you got like your standard go-to riffs that you, when you pick up your bass, that you always play, and a lot of those songs were like that, and then they became records, man, which was pretty amazing. But
so Andrew, can I ask? Did you feel you were under pressure to do something that kind of put you amongst, if you like, bass players that were soloists as well, or were you just happy doing grooves and you felt pressurized to do something a little different?
Well, I just figured. I realized that I had something to say, like I had a voice, and what I had to do was become comfortable with what my voice was. Like, I love all the great bass players, Stanley, Marcus, Victor. But Stanley is Stanley, Marcus is Marcus.
That's right. Yeah.
Victor. So all I can do is be Andrew Gouch.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And I'm very, very comfortable. I've been on stage with Marcus. I've been on stage with Victor. And never been on stage with Stanley, but I'm very comfortable in who I am.
Yes,
I'm worried about trying to do what Marcus does. Now, let's do some licks that I like, and I'll steal one of his licks if I like it. But I'm never trying to sound like Marcus Miller. I don't want to do that, And I would always encourage people. It's great to glean and take things from people you admire, but what you have to do is be conscious of having your own voice, and God He gave your voice to you, He didn't give anybody else, and be comfortable with the fact that everybody's not going to like you. It's like, everybody's not going to like you. So you can't, a lot of people are discouraged by that, because especially in today with all the social media and how things get there like immediately everywhere. You can't be caught up in that, and you stay true to who you are, and use what God gave you. Then
sorry to interrupt you, Andrew. I think that's actually fantastic advice for young musicians or musicians that are coming up. And I feel like I've been there as well. You've been asked to do something, you want to sound like somebody else, but you've got to be comfortable with what God has given you. And you speak it, and God gives you the words to say. He will empower you, and you're just not true to yourself if you try to be somebody else. So that's great stuff. Thank you.
And you have to be. I look back at my life, and I realize, and I'm happy with the fact that I never compromised what I believed. My principles for the sake of a gig, and there are a million gigs. I got a lot of gigs, but there was many more gigs that I would never have gotten, because I'm the way I am. And you have to be comfortable with, sometimes you won't get the gig, but God, He's always just been so faithful to me, man.
Oh, man.
And my wife and I been talking a lot about how, when everybody knows the Lord's Prayer, and we say, give us this day our daily bread. So give me what I need today.
Absolutely.
And I'll trust you for tomorrow.
It's a different story. Absolutely.
Which is what I've been doing, man, this last year, because I went through the pandemic depression like everybody else. It was all of a sudden nothing, and that's what made me kind of dive into, like, if you see my videos, this is the view you always see. This is where I'm sitting when I'm making all those videos, and literally I walk downstairs and I'm at work, what helped me was when I started going live and interacting, because we need fellowship,
Exactly. Amen. Amen. That's right.
It helped because I actually got depressed for a minute and wasn't even playing. I didn't play for a few months, and luckily my wife has this incredible job, so she never lost a beat, and it's really about. Yeah, I tell people, I said I know my wife loves me because she doesn't need me. Like she's just fine without me, you know.
Oh my days! You know, so I'm glad you mentioned the you know how the pandemic affected you, and because you know that's one of the questions we wanted to ask, because we know, you know, some would say, you know, you're at the top of your game, but I, you know, just briefly speaking to you yesterday, you know, I come to realize, you know, you're a very down to earth guy, and you're very in tune with who you are, and like you just said, you're teaching us about being true to yourself. So we can see that you're a principled man, you know, and going through, you know, and I'm happy that you're willingly sharing with us, you know, how the pandemic affected you, because we know that can affect men in a lot of different ways, you know, especially as, you know, the breadwinner and your family, you know, like me, I'm always thinking family, roof over the head, providing. That's me, you know. There was some time back, some years back, me and my wife were having the discussion, you know, she said, you're always years ahead. But I think as a man, that is naturally what it's, to me, is how we should be thinking.
Yeah, that's the natural order.
Yeah, it's the natural way, you know. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut in, but I just found it very interesting that, you know, you would willingly open up and, you know, share how the pandemic, you know, even affected you. And this is somebody like yourself, you know, who we would say, you know, you got gigs on tap. You know, you got sessions on tap, and the pandemic is affecting every facet of the arts industry. Doesn't matter what level you're at, doesn't matter who you are, everybody is feeling it, and feeling it at the same level.
Right. Yeah.
All at the same level at the same time.
Yeah, and it's for you know, the last year was actually a blessing because it forced me to get out of a comfort zone, you know, and I understand. And see what you said about gigs on tap. Like I said, I'm 62. So what a lot of musicians have trouble reconciling themselves with the fact that one day you're not going to be the man anymore. It doesn't matter. Michael Jordan retired, you know, Muhammad Ali retired. I don't care how great you are. Your season is going to come to an end for certain things. And I believe that our lives are a series of seasons. And there's a season for me to be doing all those gigs. And as I've gotten older, there's a lot of young cats that grew up. There's guys that grew up listening to the guys that grew up listening to me, you know. And so they're coming in and they're killing and taking over the gigs and working for a lot less money than I'm willing to work for, you know. So and it's funny because most of the artists that I play with, they're all dying now, you know. I go down the list sometimes and it blows me away. Excuse me. I started with James, you know, and then I work with James, I work with Walter and Edwin Hawkins, I work with Crouch, you know, and like all these people are gone now. And I was the young gun back then, you know.
Right.
But what it shows us is that we have to be able to adjust to new seasons in our life.
Sure.
And embrace it, because you can either sit around and wallow in self-pity and be kind of what we call hating on the new cats that are coming and doing kind of gigs you used to get. But what it made me do, that's one of the main reasons I did my record, because right before I started working on it all those years, and then I don't know if you know, but I was the last bass player for Prince, and I was the last bass player in the New Power Generation.
Right.
And that gig ended for me in 2015, so I haven't had a touring gig since 2015. But what I do I do records all the time. People send me tracks from all over the world. So I'm going to put a plug in. Anybody needs tracks, Facebook or Instagram. But, you know, that's what I do. And I give lessons. I started giving lessons, and Zoom made, and Skype and all that stuff made that very easy. And I learned that I have the temperament to teach. I never had to do that, you know.
Okay.
That I like doing it, you know, and it's just nice interacting with people, man. I just started playing at, there's a restaurant here, and I live in Seattle now.
Okay.
I'm from LA, but my wife got a job up here with Amazon, of course, a couple of years ago, 4 years ago. But I stayed in LA, but then I came up after 2 years because I was like, it just made no sense. I was coming up once a month and staying, and then going back to LA. I thought I had to be there for the business, but it just didn't make sense. So now I'm here. I absolutely love it. And the situation just happened for me in the last month that this new restaurant opened up, and it's a Creole soul food restaurant.
Okay.
It's right on the beach, Alki Beach, which is the main beach in Seattle. And this woman, somebody introduced me to her, and we spoke, and we just immediately clicked. And so now I'm in charge of all the music at that restaurant.
Fantastic.
So I'm able to have my own band. What I've been doing the last, I don't know how many years. And so I have my own band, and we play, and we do all kind of stuff because Seattle's a very diverse city.
Yeah, of course.
We do gospel, we do jazz, we do whatever, you know, and it's just, and it's been therapeutic for me because I'm able to, because when you have something, a gift that God gave you, and it's amazing to see how what he gave you is blessing somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've only been playing there 3 weeks. The first night we played there, this woman came up to me and said, "Can I just hug you?" To me, that's what it's all about. Yeah. So I see the thing up here that says 10 minutes to wrap up. Are we almost done?
Yeah, well, we're coming down, but, you know, before we do, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your album. You know, there's a track, is mainly the first, well, there's a few tracks. I mean, I love what you did with Eleanor Rigby. And, you know, the last track there, you know, that Gap Band track, Early in the Morning. But listen, the one that gets me is We Don't Need No Bass.
Well, that's the name of the album, and that came I started in the 70s when there were no gospel bass players. That's why they call me the Godfather, because I was almost me and Joel Smith were the first two that ever got recognized, you know. And I would go around to churches, literally, and it's a true story what I'm saying. I would go to a church to play, and they'd say, "We don't need no bass. It's on the pedals."
You know what? Let me just Andrew, forgive me. Let me just play that track.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just play that track, because you know what? I wanted to ask you about it because Jeff and myself were talking earlier. Now, we've both experienced this as well, so it wasn't just in the US. But listen, everybody, viewers, listen to this.
Man, when I was coming up, they didn't even want bass in church. They used to tell me, "You don't need no bass. Organ player can play bass on the pedals." But it ain't like that no more.
Right, I'm going to fade that right there. Now, listen, I have to agree, man. Listen, There ain't no Hammond organ on this planet with a bass like that.
You know, the point of making that it's only bass, and so it was. I don't know what made me do that. I just was like,
no, because I'm saying, ooh, attitude. I said, listen to that. I said, no, that's such a true statement, though.
yeah,
It is such a true statement because I play bass, but I'm actually a guitarist. And I was sharing with Jeff earlier, you know, I can remember when turning up at national convocations and, you know, the musical director would see me come in and, you know, this is a Hammond player, and he's like, okay, where you going? Don't sit up near me, you know? And it's like,
right.
what against guitars, you know, back in the early days in the Black Pentecostal churches in the UK, guitars were the dominant instrument. You would have a bank of probably 6, 7 guitarists, even a banjo player, a bass player, and no keys. All of a sudden, when the keys come in with the Hammond, push the guitarist out.
Wow.
And then it took a while. Then we have, you know, guys like the late Paul Reed, Noel Robinson, Andy Smith, and a few others, you know, like Jeff, you know, that kind of brought the guitar back in, made it relevant that it's now cool to be a guitarist, you know, on the scene, on the gospel scene. But there was a time, you know, when keyboards were just coming in, guitar, rhythm, and lead was being pushed out. And that's where I was. Yeah. And so it's kind of similar thing, really, you know.
Church is so steeped in traditions.
Hey, listen.
Even that argument, not even just church, but period, even that argument of 4-string. When you hear somebody go, Jocko only needed 4 strings. Prince, the thing I loved about Prince was, well, he was only a year older than me, and so, but I was the oldest one in the band by far, and Prince was the kind of person, he liked to talk trash, and he said stuff like, yeah, Gouch's bass got all those strings on it. Why you got to have all those strings? Oh, she said we got to rap. But anyway, he said that to me. He said Larry's bass only has 4 strings, and I said to him, well, you know, this bass has those 4 strings on it too. So, why do you have all those knobs? Larry doesn't have all those knobs, and he was just trying to be funny. But I told him, I said, you know what, Prince, this bass is the reason you called me. And he say that.
But I bet his jaw dropped when you heard it.
Oh, that's how I got the gig, because when I was playing with Shaka, we opened up for him a bunch of times in 2011. And the first time he saw Shaka's show, he came running looking for me. And he was like, oh man, dude, you were killing. Like, he was talking to me like I was him and he was me. He was like, who did those arrangements? I was like, well, I did, you know. And I would tell people, if you wanted to see some of that Shaka Khan stuff, go on YouTube and just type in Shaka Khan North Sea Jazz Festival.
Okay. Yeah.
2011. But somebody spelled bass wrong on here.
Yeah. That's it.
EASS. But anyway, so that's how I got it, because after that show, every show we did after that, be standing on the side of the stage with his dark shades on, watching me play. And then in the end of 2011, Shaka fired us. She just fired the whole band.
Really?
They do that, man. You know, you realize these artists are all crazy, and they're very whimsical. And at some point, she was just like, okay, I want a new band. And literally 1 week after she fired us, Prince, his keyboard player, Cassandra O'Neill, called me and said, Prince wants to know if he can have your number. He wants to call you. And a week after Shaka fired me, Prince called. So I'm a living witness of one door closing and a much more gigantic door opening, you know. So
Listen, you know, this has been fantastic. Obviously, you know, it's only a half-hour show, and you know, it's never ever long enough. And especially someone like yourself,
We'll do an hour.
You know something, we're gonna have to move to that. We're gonna have to talk to our producer and probably, you know, look, we'll talk. Just hold the line. Listen, guests, thank you for tuning in. You know, again, you know, forgive us, but we've run out of time. And yes, we know some of our guests, you guys want to know a little bit more about, and we do need to go a bit longer. We'll sort it out in time to come. Just bear with us. But, you know, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in. And, you know, thank you to our guest, Andrew Gouch. And, you know, look, it may not be the first, the one and only time. Let's hope, you know, we can do this again, and we can talk a little bit more. You guys can get to hear a little bit more about this great man's life and his journey, and he can encourage us some more. So listen, it's a goodbye from me till next week. Jeff.
See you, everybody. And Andrew, thank you so much for just sharing your thoughts. It's been a fabulous time. And you've given us all a lot to think about. And thank you for using your gift that God has given you to bless the world with your music. Thank you.
Praise God. Thank you, guys.
Hold the line, Andrew. We'll talk behind the scenes.
All right.
God bless you, everybody. Take care.
Bye for now.